Welcome to Behind the Doors, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of residential real estate investing. I'm your host, Dan Noma Jr., here with my co-host, Marvin Cruz.
We're here to help you unlock the best strategies and practice for investors. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro looking to scale your portfolio.
We've spent decades navigating the ever-changing world of real estate, and now we're sharing everything we've learned to help you succeed.
From off-market deals to cash flow management and everything in between, we'll break it down and bring you actionable insights that can make a real difference in your investments.
So get ready to open the door to new opportunities and take your real estate investing to the next level. Let's dive in.
Hey, what's up, Dan? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We're back in studio. We got a big day.
We have a huge day.
Yeah.
We have a huge guest today.
Yeah.
But before we talk about our guests and introduce our wonderful guests at Kando, we've always talked about having a right team.
Yep.
And how important that is. Not only having data behind your decision, but having a right team.
Yep.
Today, that's what this group is all about.
Yep.
They support investors, and it's all about building the right team. So without further ado, we have the VP of Operations here, Mr. Joe Wechsler. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How you doing today?
We're doing
Thanks for having me.
fantastic. Yeah, we're doing fantastic.
Yeah,
So
thanks, Joe.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Kando.
Yeah, sure. So name's Joe. Worked at Kando almost 10 years now. We previously went under the name Home Shield Solutions. That's how we started our company back in the day. So just to give you a quick history of Kando, we started in the property preservation space, supporting the REO industry. The mortgage servicers. Obviously, after 2008, there was a big surplus of foreclosures, unfortunately. And we came in and started supporting those companies and the banks. Over time, we grew our market share, we grew our areas that we covered, and different clients came to us because of our great service. They're like, hey, can you help us with this, help us with that? And we naturally grew that way. About 2015, so 10 years, we got into construction. And then a few years later into multifamily construction, a few years later, occupied maintenance. And here we are today, covering a wide range of markets and areas, from everything from our field services down from the grass cuts and the preservation style, all the way up through full renovations through our construction division.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so you guys, our audience is, a lot of investors of all walks of life. And you guys really, cut your teeth kind of working with some of the larger institutions in the country, similar to my background, is how we connected, obviously, through some of these bigger groups. But, starting out, I think to Marvin's point of, building your team, and you've worked with investors of all walks of life now, where do you think construction plays into, construction, renovation, turns, all of that plays into the setting up the right investor or setting up the right investor portfolio or buying the right investments?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you should really start with construction or with somebody who knows construction from the beginning. If you go in and you don't properly assess the home or assess the asset that you're going to invest in, you can be caught off guard with a lot of unexpected costs, which then tank your investment. So it's really important to line that up from the beginning. Make sure you're aligned with understanding, what that, obviously what your strategy is, but align that with someone who knows construction so that you can come in there day one and really underwrite it at the best possible way. We've seen, unfortunately, many times, even on the institutional level, where the acquisition team was not in sync with the construction team, and they underwrote massive portfolios horribly wrong.
Right. Yeah, and you guys like to get involved, at the beginning, right? So, you're willing to even walk the property with the investor in their due diligence process, right?
Yeah, so we do that. No extra cost. We'll come in there. I like to call it hand-holding. We walk, partner. We do it together. Give them advice, help them understand what the real costs would be with repairing different things. They might come up with, depending how detailed they are, different concepts, open a wall here, do this, do that. What's that going to look like on the, for the ROI on that, whatever the strategy is on it. and we'll come in from the get-go and help them and walk through it together. Right. Not just the home, but the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's super cool about what you guys do, and we talked about this, I think on like one of our last episodes, is we were talking about the difference in, types of partners,
Yep.
right? So you've got property managers that work with mom and pop investors, property managers that work with, default investors, contractors. Like I think a big point that we made during that episode is we talked about contractors, that there is two walks of life in contractors for sure. There's those that renovate for retail.
Yep.
And then there are those that renovate and do construction services for real estate investors. I think what's funny is like leadership from your team. When I first met them, one of the first things they said to me was that, we are not going to renovate a property if someone's going to live in the house. Like that is not what we do. We renovate for investors. How do you, that's probably a big risk for a construction company to carve out the niche and just say, this is what we do. How did you guys get into specializing in that? And I guess, was it a big risk?
Yeah. So like I said, it's sort of morphed, our current service offering sort of morphed from where we started from, just servicing that institutional style client and just investor, helped shape our process. And that's just what we do. It helped us carve, out a spot in the industry for us. We've talked about servicing, the retail customer, haven't gotten into it yet, maybe in the near future. But it's a little bit different approach. There's a little bit of different language you speak when dealing with someone who wants to remodel, maybe a one-off bathroom, and they're going to be living there during that renovation, versus coming in with an investor, speaking the same language, and moving on through that strategy. So it is a little bit different playing field, but obviously you can think of it, construction is construction, but the process with it is a little bit different.
Got it. Is that the same on the field services side of the house as well? You only do for investors?
Yeah, primarily, yeah. Property managers, investors, yeah.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what about like the field services? I think that's kind of a cool thing to talk about too, is that you guys are even doing that ongoing maintenance that everybody forgets about. And that's like the forgotten thing. You know how many times I've listed properties for investors, or I've listed them for like big companies, and I've got to like beg somebody to cut the grass because they forgot to do that.
Yep.
That's a big deal, man.
Shovel snow, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. You guys shovel snow too?
Yeah. We do not just on the vacant home, but also, if there's a renter there, if it's a rental portfolio, we'll come and do the maintenance for that as well. But I'll tell you a funny, like you just said, like they'll forget about it. They don't realize there's this maintenance involved with, when you buy a portfolio. I think it was 2-3 years ago, we had one of the institutional clients came to us and like, oh my God, they just reported that Atlanta it's gonna be a deep freeze in Atlanta. We have 2,000 houses there. They're not winterized, and we're freaking out. Can you help us? And we mobilized a team within a few days and winterized about 2,000 homes in the Atlanta area for them, and likely saved a lot of money for them if depending, I don't remember how long that deep freeze was, but could have had a lot of busted pipes and a lot of damage from that area.
Yeah,
which people don't think about.
Yeah, I sold a bunch of homes to a company once, and it was the first time they'd ever bought houses in the Midwest. And same thing, they kind of forgot. They just didn't think to winterize them. Like none of their field crews thought to winterize them, and they didn't use Kando. And their pipes were bursting. Yeah. We dealt with so many problems with that. That was a nightmare.
I think you're being a little humble there, because I want that audience to hear that, right? When you think about property preservation, you got pest control that they have to think about, snow removal, to your point, pipes, janitorial services in some cases. So this is a huge offering for those folks that live in one state but invest in another state, and they're dealing with occupancy at that time.
Absolutely.
Especially your short term. Yeah, sorry.
And I would say even the basic grass cut, right? You let your grass grow too high, you're going to get a code violation. That's unnecessary.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah, and especially if it's vacant and you're waiting for that tenant to come in. Like the last thing you want to do is a tenant to walk up and see a property that looks like it's not being maintained.
Yeah.
Like that's like the last thing. It almost like even if they loved it, it sets the tone for what kind of landlord you're going to be.
Yeah.
And it's just not a
And even
not a
even
great
with
experience.
the neighbors, even just with the neighbors.
Right. Yeah, you got to be conscious of your neighbors for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
You guys also do eviction services. That's the sad part about it, but it's the service you offer, right? So
Yeah. So we're unfortunately a part of, obviously it's part of the business, but it's never a happy work order seeing those. But we do a lot of across the country in a lot of different markets. We help whether an investor picked up an asset, an MPL, and then has to go through the foreclosure process. We'll come in there and help them from work with the sheriffs to the rekey to whatever the local jurisdiction, those laws are, whether it's set out, storage, whatever the laws are, we'll come and do that with them.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and there's a lot more that you guys do, obviously repairs to other maintenances. What about markets that you guys are in? For the audience that's listening, are you guys everywhere? Where are you at?
Yeah, so we have, in our company, we have two main divisions, our field services division and our construction services division. So our construction services division is active in about 15 markets, primarily Texas, Oklahoma, and eastward. One day we'll make it all the way to the West Coast. So your large markets there, you're very, your popular investment markets, the Sun Belt, the Midwest, some of the workforce housing there. And the field services, we're a lot more established in other areas. So it's not as heavy as construction. You don't need as much, I would say hands-on. So we have a long list of trusted vendors over the years that we work with, all the way out from, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Midwest, and then everywhere towards the East Coast.
Cool. How do you manage all of this? This sounds like a lot. How do you guys, have you guys built some technology to manage all of this?
So we haven't built fully custom yet, but we've worked with developers and semi-customizing some off-the-shelf software, and then building our process around it to really complement each other. Obviously, today's day and age, using a lot of the automation functionality out there, even now introducing AI, really helps just track progress, track updates. For us, the biggest key is communication. So having a tool that we could really communicate across the board. We have a very, let's say, horizontal team. Like there's a lot of people involved in every project. So everyone really has to communicate, be on the same page. So, task management, schedules, we go very detailed. Every construction project has a Gantt set up with dependencies, progress draws, photos, and then obviously communication across the whole way. Where, I remember we one time onboarded a new employee, and he came from, one of these other larger companies out there. And, he was just like, wow, so you guys a client can call you, you can answer him and tell him where the project up to in 2 minutes. We're like, that's the point. It allows us to deliver the service, which is our differentiator. So, our biggest differentiator, we say, is our service in detail. And, that's how we do it. We're very, very specific in our process and approach, in the back end as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's, you don't see that a lot, right?
Nope.
Like especially from a construction company.
Nope.
We like to say, we're the small mom and pop, but with a big team behind us. We try to give that same level of service where we give you the time of day, but we also have the resources behind us. We're not gonna come at you as we're too big. It's just not. It's not who we are. We're never gonna say that. We're not gonna make the client feel that way.
Yeah, it's even in your email. Your email is yes, we can, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the website domain, right?
Yeah, that is awesome.
The website
yes, we can.
domain.
I love it.
Yeah, it's our can-do approach. That's how we've grown. So we made it our name.
Yeah. Well, let's get more of that, like the macro of the market too. I mean, I think that's, we've kind of, not that we don't want to cover more about Kando, we certainly can, but, I think if you could give us a little, like your kind of 2 cents on, what's the state of the market from your perspective as a contractor? What should our investors be on the lookout for when they're looking at properties, renovation scopes, things to stay away from, things to maybe gravitate towards? What kinds of things are you seeing in the market out there that our investors should keep an eye on?
Yeah, it's a great question. My experience, we're investors we've worked with ran into problems is not doing proper due diligence on your classics, your structural, the septic, plumbing, not getting a proper, assessment of the home, and then coming later and seeing, oh crap, why is my budget flying through the roof now? I got to replace a septic, 20 grand, 30 grand. This, I got to add 10 grand. And not properly either accounting for these things or assessing them, at the get-go. That's been, from our experience, that's been something that we've, unfortunately have to come, pick up the pieces for some other investors. I would say make sure, depending on where the home came from, if it's your classic foreclosure, you got to be a lot more careful about it because those tend not to be, to be taken care of. I don't know how long it's been sitting on the street for. You don't know the previous tenant or homeowner took care of it. If it's a standard homeowner who's selling their home and moving, you can assume it's a lot cleaner. But regardless, you have to do your due diligence and look for those high ticket items. From at the first walkthrough.
Yeah. Is there any stuff like that you would stay away from investors? Like what I heard Brian say in our office the other day is that you guys try not to move walls and things like that and get into heavy renovation kind of stuff. And I assume that's not just a function of you guys from a business perspective. It's got to go beyond that to, it's going to take longer, cost more money, kind of all of those things. What can you share with our listeners about why you guys, try to stick to the more kind of lipstick remodel kind of work?
Yeah. So I would rephrase, I won't say we're trying to stick to it, but it's about strategy. So a lot of our clients won't want to do that because, like you said, it's going to take longer, or you may not have needed a permit to do whatever you had to do, but now you might need one. And obviously dealing with the township, it's going to take longer. And every day you're either not putting it on the market or don't have a tenant in there, costs you money. So those are things to look out for. And we try to, advise the clients or investors on such items. By doing this, you might raise the value X, but it's going to take you X amount longer, which, do the math and see if that works out to your benefit. A lot of times it does, sometimes it doesn't. So, it's really working and understanding, because we've worked with so many different types of investors, large, small. Everyone has their own approach, their own buy box, what their strategy is. So it's again, building that relationship, from the start and understanding each other and really helping them make the best decisions for their properties.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting point, right? If you're a real estate investor, you kind of you're probably going into it the mindset that you want to buy the ugliest house on the street.
Right.
Right. And then I think what I just heard him say or Joe say is that's probably not the best strategy, right?
Yep.
Their history of working with all of these investors have proven that, let's try to find the best deal, but also take into account its condition, and that's part of our process.
And there are some who look for the ugliest house on the street. It's just it's a strategy. It's everyone has a little bit of a different approach and what how they feel they're different or how they're gonna do their thing in the market. So it's not a one approach all.
Oh, for sure.
No.
But I think I know where you're going with that, right?
Yeah.
You gotta consider, and you both are saying the same thing. This is going to cost more. Just the ugly home is not going to be the easiest one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, even though you might be buying it cheaper, it might be the cheapest house.
Exactly.
It's but buying it, no one ever said you want to buy it cheaper.
Yeah.
They said you want to buy it right. And
That's
part
right.
of that is you've got to make sure that its condition is something you can work with,
Yeah, good point.
And I would add to that, even on the design side of things. So we've you can stick to the standard, what you look at, your standard flip, mood board and materials. But sometimes we've worked with investors who go crazy and they treat it as, they're a luxury home, even though it shouldn't be. But they're just, getting, they have a thing for design, and they're trying to do something crazy, and it ends up eating into their budget, and then ruining that investment for them. But there are ways to value engineer it. There's a lot of material on the market now that can help something look more luxurious without being that item. Your porcelain tile that looks like marble, right? That's been around for a while, but even more on the commercial side, you have marble looking plastic sheets. You have wallpapers that look like wood paneling, like different things you can do that are significantly cheaper than the real option.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting kind of question right now is like, you've obviously been at this a while. Cost of materials, right? I assume that's an additional benefit that you guys provide your investors is you guys are buying all the materials for the job, right?
Yes. So that because of our volume across the country, we also have significant discounts with some of the suppliers. So we pass those savings on to our clients. And we can help them source materials. Some things are going to be your classic Home Depot items. Some things a little more on the higher end side, but nonetheless, we have internal purchasing team. We have partners out there that we work with. If it's a larger item, a more specific item that needs to be sourced, but we have those resources, and we again pass those savings down to the clients.
Yeah, that's even more important now. Like this week, these tariffs are starting to. And a lot of the construction materials are coming from overseas, and I don't know that all of them are coming from areas with tariffs or what have you, but it's something that I started factoring into some of my budgets. Is that there could be a 10% difference in pricing on materials coming up here pretty quickly, which is going to have an effect on the market.
Yeah, for sure. I know Canada is a big supplier of obviously lumber and I believe like drywall as well. So we'll have to see how that affects it. But the most recent experience we had with that was COVID, when it was so unexpected and just prices were going through the roof, and it was impossible to account for that. It just happened, and to deal with it. And
what about labor from your guys' perspective? That seems to have kind of changed in the industry, across the board. Have you guys found that getting quality labor is more difficult now than it was before?
Yeah, it's I want to articulate this right, but it's almost like, it's a little bit about the American culture, right? You feel like people just don't want to put the hard work in some areas, and and that carries into all industries. So unfortunately, you'll run into a few bad apples that this new culture is rubbed off on. We have a good vendor management team. We've lots of years of experience doing this and vetting them out and building relationships with them. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but we, reliability has really been the biggest factor, and that can come from just, cost and some things like that. But it hasn't been easy out there in terms of labor.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, what were you going to say about your vendor management? Is that like, onboarding a vendor into your platform? I'd probably have to jump through some hoops, I would think.
Yeah, so our mindset working with vendors is we treat them as extensions of our team. We're not just passing on a contract that they take over. They work with our project manager. Many times we'll set them up with back office. We'll train them. How do you create an invoice? Like some of these people have never created an invoice before. I'll tell you a funny story. Many years ago, it was actually local to our office. We had a tile installer come to get paid in. Normal business practice, you need to get an invoice so that our bookkeeping team can process it. He had no invoices, no papers in his truck. I'm like, hey, buddy, you got to have an invoice. I can help you. He pulled out a tile from his truck and he wrote the invoice on a tile and put it on my desk.
You still got it? Paperweight?
I don't. I don't know why I don't, but I should.
I would have kept that one. Yeah, I would have kept that one.
Yeah. But anyway, so we do a lot of that. We do a lot of hand holding and set these smaller crews up to really help them launch their companies. Help them, guide them in getting an LLC. Getting the proper insurances, understanding what a back office should do for a company like theirs. Even just basic bookkeeping, we'll help guide them. We won't do it for them, but we'll help set them up, because our mindset is that if we do that for them, we hope it comes back in return, and then they'll be part of our team and they'll want to work together for a long future together. And those relationships are always the best when you really just hand in hand and running with them.
Yep. So when should an investor, engage with their contractor, or can do if they're going to go down your route? Should they be doing that right as they get started thinking about investing and understand the process? When they get something under contract, like when do you, if you were to write your perfect avatar of a customer, like what would be their behavior that you guys would tackle on?
So I would suggest, if they're really serious about investing, I would suggest that they, at a minimum, have a meeting and, line up a contractor, right? You want to know someone that you can have, work with you when you take that next step, whether you're walking a home to purchase or you're under contract and you're doing your due diligence. You want to get that out of the way. You don't want to have to start scrambling. Like, oh my God, I just went under contract. I don't know who's going to do the work, right? You want to get that out of the way. Like I said earlier, you can go at it hand in hand. It's communicate. I just saw this thing. What do you think on it? Even if we're not going to walk every home with them initially, just to check out houses because we can't be doing that all day. But we'll be there for guidance. Whether it's we'll help just give them basic feedback. Maybe they'll be on FaceTime. They'll walk us around the home, and we'll give them some basic feedback and opinions on certain things. But definitely in the beginning, because you want to know you have someone to rely on to just come in and start from the beginning.
Nice. We've been having a little fun with some of our guests recently, and we've been asking them to share with us like their biggest horror story with regard to, we've had a property manager in here that had a murder.
Yeah,
right?
we had a dead body in a freezer.
Yeah, they found a dead body in a freezer. So you guys in construction see kind of everything. What's the worst? What's the worst one? What's the one that's kicking around the office right now? That's the worst story that you can think of that's happened on some of these job sites you guys are walking into?
Yeah, I have a few I can say. I mean, none of them personally. I mean, we've had guys obviously be chased by squatters and guns and all that stuff. We've had, unfortunately, bodies found. There was one time our crew went into a basement and found a ton of just different animals just hanging from the ceiling. Like it was nasty. But we have funny stories also. Like, I just put one out the other day on LinkedIn. It's an older story, but it was part of an eviction and a trash out. It was actually in Jersey. Our crew went down to a property and they found cages and cages in the backyard with exotic birds. And the house was vacant already. And not common to see in Jersey, maybe in Florida, but not in Jersey. So in the office, we did a bunch of digging later on and found that the owner of this home, the previous owner, was actually suspected of stealing penguins from the zoo many years earlier. So this guy had something for animals, exotic animals. But that's one funny story. Another time, we also from an eviction, they had like a mini farm, and there was a donkey in the backyard, and our crew. So the homeowner left, but they left the donkey. So our crew actually went for many months and took care of that donkey, feed it every week, take care of it. So you never know what you run into. We've had guys run into bathtubs full of rattlesnakes in a home in Kansas. Crazy stuff out there. It's a Wild West.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
it is.
I love this segment,
there.
by the way.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
The worst.
I would have never imagined we get these kind of stories. Dead bodies, snakes, penguins. That might be my favorite.
And construction's hard work. I'm sure there's like injuries we could probably get into too. My dad was a contractor, and one time a guy comes running in our kitchen and he had cut off like 3 of his fingers.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I'm like 10. Looking at this guy with no fingers, I'm like, oh my God, this is dangerous work.
Thank God we haven't had any crazy stories like that. I mean, the occasional fall or trip, but nothing like that.
Nothing too bad. Well, how do our listeners find you guys? What's the best way to get connected with you and your team?
Yeah, so you can visit our website, yeswecan.com, or you can shoot me a direct email, joe@yeswecan.com. Or call my direct line, 732-227-4045. Glad to get on a call with you, discuss your needs, help you walk through the process, and whether you're just starting or you're a seasoned investor, and we'd love to partner with you and and help you complete your projects and build a portfolio.
Yeah. So from onboarding to inspection to
Yeah.
renovation to preservation
They do it
to,
all.
eviction,
Maintenance.
one-stop shop for all
Yeah.
of your
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like the things that you don't
Turnkey is the term we use, right?
Yeah.
We don't, one throat to choke, turnkey. Those are all
Yep.
terms we use so that one phone call, you don't have to deal with different vendors for this, different vendors for that. We take
I
care of
love
it
that.
for you.
Yeah.
And we got your phone number now. Now the world just heard your phone number. So
Oh,
get ready,
man.
buddy.
They can do. Yeah, we should tell him how many listeners we have. He might have a problem there.
We
Joe.
appreciate you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks, Joe.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thank
it,
you,
man.
buddy.
See ya.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Doors. We hope you found today's insights valuable for your real estate investing journey.
Remember, real estate success doesn't happen overnight, but with the right tools and strategies, you can build long-term wealth and create passive income.
If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with others who are passionate about real estate investing.
Don't forget to follow us on social media for more tips and exclusive content.
Until next time, keep unlocking new opportunities, and we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Doors.